Welcome. Thank you for joining us at today's program featuring artist Christina Margarita Erives, presented as part of the Wignall Museum's Home Edition. Home Edition is a series of curated artist talks, workshops, and discussions featuring artists and cultural workers. My name is Rebecca Trawick, and I serve as the director and curator of the Wignall Museum. The Wignall Museum is a teaching museum and interdisciplinary art space that introduces Chaffey College students, faculty, staff, and community members to innovative contemporary art objects and ideas. By fostering critical thinking, visual literacy, discourse, and empathy, the museum seeks to enhance the intellectual and cultural life of our community. We want to take a moment to recognize that we are situated on the Rancho Cucamonga campus of Chaffey College, which resides on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tongva people. We offer our recognition and respect to the elders, both past, present, and future.
And hello, my name is Roman Stallenwerk. I'm assistant curator at the Wignall Museum. Visit us at www.chaffey.edu/Wignall to access our full schedule of programs and our available recordings. When possible, recordings are made available on our website. Announcements post to our email subscribers and social media when new videos are available. All recordings on our site include captions and audio descriptions as options. You can follow us on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Wignall Museum. Visit our website About Us page to sign up to receive email announcements. And we also ask that you complete a brief survey after the session at tinyurl.com/Wignall Spring 21 Visitors Survey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Hadel. I am the preparator at the museum. In a moment, Christina Erives will be presenting for about a half an hour or so, and the remaining time will be available for Q&A.
Thanks, Roman. Thanks, Andy. So today I'm pleased to introduce our guest, Christina Erives. Christina Erives was born in Los Angeles, California. She received her BA and MA from California State University, Northridge, and her MFA from Pennsylvania State University. She has worked as a resident artist and instructor at New Mexico State University, Belger Crane Yard Studios in Kansas City, Missouri, and Archie Bray Foundation in Helena, Montana, and the University of Montana. Ceramics as a material has permanence, and it is one of the ways that we are able to learn about ancient cultures, according to Erives. She continues, there's so much beauty in these traditions, and Erives's aim is to be able to make a mark of her time that will be preserved in the history of ceramic objects. So please join me in giving Christina a warm virtual welcome.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here today. So this is me. I have a big appetite for food and for art, so I hope you'll enjoy that. So I've put together a range of images from the past 6 years I've been out of school and doing various residencies and teaching residencies. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end about either my work or about these residencies if you have any at the end. And so basically, I have two bodies of work. One is sort of this large installation work, and the other are these small singular objects. But they both, for me, go hand in hand from similar intentions to want to make something that's, vibrant and nourishing in clay. So I'm going to repeat a couple of sentences that you just said, Rebecca. But I think what has stood out to me most since entering the field of ceramics is a community of people. Clay has this ability to bring about this strong power of connection as it pulls together people from all over the world and connects us to a tradition that will be always be a part of our past, our present, and our future. And as a material, it offers us so much malleability, giving us the opportunity to share our individual stories in such a beautiful way, as it takes on an endless possibility of color, shape, and form. And, ceramics is, as you mentioned before, has permanence, and it's, basically made out of stone, and we're like freezing every mark we make after it reaches temperature. And it's one of the ways we learned about ancient cultures. And I've always found this to be so beautiful, and it's what attracts me to clay. And I've always wanted to make my mark in the history of ceramic objects. So this image right here was from a demo I did a few years ago And it felt really special to me because everyone got to sculpt their own piece and share their own story with me. And I think one of my main goals as an artist, and for many artists, I believe, is just finding another way to communicate and connect with people. And so for me, my pieces often stem from my identity as a Mexican American Chicana and my personal family story. And my interest in creating these first objects sort of arose from my fear of being disconnected from these things, distanced by migration and sort of diluted through generations. Language was especially a struggle for me that I would avoid communicating altogether as a child. I never felt confident in my vocabulary, and neither Spanish or English. So, and I think that's what kind of drew me into art. I felt a sense of comfort communicating abstractly through physical and visual vocabularies. And food was my main point of departure. And it's what helped define my identity the most in finding my voice. And it just helped me to paint a clearer picture of who I was and where I was from. And I always enjoyed how we relate to different foods and how we're able to share it as an extension of ourselves and how it can reflect our tastes and where we are from. And so I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in California, which is where I'm back now because of COVID. I wanted to be near family. Um, and I think growing up with such an abundance of people, 7 brothers, 4 sisters, and my mom always buying like these large quantities of food um, to feed us like constantly, is what subconsciously drew me into this style of my work where I always wanted to include more and more food objects, like there could never be enough. And so I came up with these ideas of that my installations would never be finished. They would grow and change each time I set them up, much like the scene in any home that changes from day to day and event to event. These table still lives would get taken down and rearranged, and new objects would come in. And so this ceramic table that you see here has taken a tour in multiple places, and everything you see is earthenware clay, and it comes apart piece by piece. And then just on the inside of the ceramic table is a wooden frame for support. So here's some detailed shots of this piece. My mom would say this phrase to me growing up that always stuck in my mind, panza llena, corazón contento, which means full belly, happy heart. And I like to let that guide my work a lot. It's sort of like, it's like my mantra to always make something happy and fun, and vibrant, fulfilling, and nourishing. And I hope that's visible in both my installation work and my smaller individual works. And then this is a close-up of a fruit stand I made simultaneously with the first table, colorful table that I did. In general, I've always been drawn into building many objects at a time and then gradually starting to collect, arrange, and rearrange these objects into various compositions and still lives. And the table setting has probably been my favorite theme by far. You know, I've always liked the idea of food being passed around the table, merged with this idea of stories and memories being passed around, represented through these various objects. And this image on the right was the first ceramic table I ever made before I started including color in my work. So it's all raw earthenware. And it was to mimic this table that my dad had built for us growing up that was super long. I mean, it's hard to tell in the image because it's just at the end of the table, but this table was like 10 feet long. So I built a ceramic table that was 10 feet long by 4 feet. And each plate carried a different story for someone in my family. So I have like certain objects that I like to return to, such as the table, but oftentimes when I get started in the studio, I just like to start making whatever's around me to get rolling, because the more objects I'm able to create in my studio, the more time I can spend learning from them and playing with them and warping and merging them in different ways. Much like any story that gets stretched over time in its telling, like such as a fish someone caught just gets bigger and bigger, or a stack of tortillas just gets taller and taller. I really enjoy these investigations and building one thing to discover another thing. And ceramics is also such a tedious process that you always have to make more to get the one piece you want. You're always working in multiples. So I think like seeing these quantities in the studio has also influenced the way I work. and always wanting to like fill up scenes with multiples. And it's also like become this habit of mine when I get started in the studio, just to warm up, I make a familiar object, just like to get my hands ready to do something else. So I'll start making eggs or tortillas, and then I just sort of let them collect in one end of my studio, and then they end up in into their own like installations. Like this fried egg wall was just like a couple eggs a day before working on something else, and then they just turn into this whole thing, which I really enjoy. How they just like take over a space. So that's kind of the way I work. This is one of my signature tiles that I've been working on for a while. The ceramics tape is sort of a pun I enjoy because I'm a ceramics artist. I enjoy including humor more and more into my studio practice, and any little thing that can make me laugh or smile. I think humor creates a very important emotion, and when I can evoke a feeling from my audience, it makes the work feel more successful and satisfying to me. And I think I get a little natural high when someone leaves a smile or a laugh on one of my posts or sends me an email on how happy like a piece made them or how they connected to it. Um, and I feel like there's so many heavy things going on in the world. I just feel like if there's any like good things I can add to it, I mean, I think that's a positive thing. So I try to make a lot of light, happy things, I think, in that way. This is, another kind of pun. Sponges for dirt and sponges made from dirt. That's like my pottery humor right there. There's a little clay sponge. Um, and here's some California love. This was an old pun that's still one of my favorites. I couldn't find the final image of it, but I made this 6-pack with Tupac on the label a while back. And I was thinking, like, if you do the math, a 6-pack of Tupac would equal a 12-pack. And then these are some jugs that I was working on for a show a year ago. I think they're funny because they're jugs and then they have nipples on them. So they're jugs with jugs. But they also carry a strong meaning for me when I think of my mom raising and breastfeeding 12 kids. And just the nourishment of being a mother in general is a pretty, intense, wonderful thing. So this piece was about her feeling these 12 cups. And this is the first time that the pedestal is actually not made out of clay. This is a found ironing board that I had painted at a car shop. And then this is sort of a comical piece for me too. I had this vague memory of associating like Swiss cheese with cartoons and as a kid, and then seeing it for the first time in the market, like under the deli glass. I remember thinking like in such awe and like amusement, like this cheese really does exist. And like it just was like a picture to me and not like a real thing. And so I had an extra wall to fill in one show, and I just thought, like, why not just cut up a bunch of slices of cheese? And I made it like really bright yellow, and it just made me happy to see this come to life and see it glow in the corner of a room. And life is so short. I just feel like you just got to make time to do what makes you happy. And like this whole show that I did really made me happy. I just had a lot of fun with it. I also found these like this yellow crate at a thrift shop, and more of these ironing boards. And so I made this little lemonade glass and lemons to go with it, lemonade set. Some details of that. And I don't often make functional work, but sometimes I get the urge just being around so many potters. I'm like, I want to make a cup. And then these are some cactus planters from the same show. This is one of my wall ashtrays that I kind of make a lot of. There's an old rhyme in Spanish I always thought was funny. Después de un buen taco, un buen tobacco, which means after a good taco, have a good tobacco. And the ashtray form has been sort of an image that I find myself revisiting often in various like iterations. And I guess I think of it as like a soft message, or when it turns into clouds or steam, it shows like this movement and cycle. And it's just sort of like my daydream go-to object in the studio. When I can't think of anything else, I just start making these clouds, and I just like, I enjoy the way they feel floating. And then this is a bookend that I made last year while teaching at the University of Montana. And this was the first time that I had taught full time. So I had a hard time finding time to like fire work, which was unusual for me because I'm constantly, producing. But for some reason, not being able to like fire the work pushed me into like wanting to make pieces out of wood and translate my ideas, more ideas into wood, which was a first for me. And I never had worked with wood really before. But I was pretty excited for that until like quarantine happened and the shop got closed. And I really want to return to this because I feel like a lot of my pieces would translate well in wood because they're so like slab base and flat, that they would also work well in wood. So once quarantine started, I was teaching from home for a couple months and working with cardboard a lot, which it was actually really fun. I made this like chicken head for my 3D foundations class, and then this watch clock that has an actual like clock mechanism in it. And then this birthday cake was the last piece before my term there ended, and that was fun. This is an installation that I made during a teaching residency at New Mexico University. NMSU, New Mexico State University. I wanted it to look like frame portraits of objects that I was associating with different people based on some old family stories. And, like a lot of my work stems from very specific stories at times, and these sceneries I get immersed in. But my end goal really is just to create these like visually rich installations that hopefully anyone can approach with a bit of curiosity and interaction. Visual representation, I think, like sort of comes and goes in my works, much like that story that gets stretched over time in its telling. I want my pieces to carry that same sense of like altered information while still carrying like the heart of its narrative. And it also gives me a chance to play between like realism and extraction, I think. And then these are my tiles that I started just a few years ago, I think 3 years ago. And my initial idea for this body of work just sprouted from me not wanting to carry that like large colorful table anymore, because it was just becoming such a hassle to like travel with it and like show it. And I finally got it back to California the last time I had showed it, and I just like wanted to like keep it there and work on something that was easier to pack. And so I thought like, oh, okay, I'm gonna make just flat tiles from now on. And so that was like a rule that I gave myself, like to only make flat stuff. And sometimes giving yourself a rule, like, is good because it forces a change in your work. And I'm actually really excited about these tile series, which are still as much work now that they've accumulated to like pack and show. But I'm still really happy with the way they are progressing. So this is one of the first compositions that I made. And I kept up with the idea of it being an evolving installation. But this time I decided to make it available in parts because I wanted it to be more accessible for people to take pieces home, because the other pieces I kept all together. And it's fun. It's been fun to see how it spreads into people's different homes. And when people send me pictures of where they have it installed, or the new compositions they make with the new little sets they kind of collect and what they picked out, I enjoy seeing that. And it's just fun just to highlight these everyday little objects. And lately, like this past year, I've just been making like individual ones and not even thinking about a final composition, just kind of having fun with it. And all these tiles are individually cut and carved, inlay with black underglaze, and then scraped with a metal rib. And then there's the first couple of years I was using mostly underglaze, but this last year I've been doing more glossy glazes, which is kind of new for me because I normally just keep my pieces kind of flat. And you'll see some of those coming up. Yeah, so here's one of the glossy ones. These are some of the newer pieces. It's one of my favorites. Some more glossy ones. But so I like the evolution of this work because I feel like we're always evolving as people, and I enjoy that sense of growth and opportunity to become better versions of ourselves. So I like that these installations don't ever have to be like fixed or stuck in one composition. I can keep editing or removing or adding pieces and letting it grow into what I want to see it become. And whenever I look at back at older work, I'm always thinking of how I want to change it, or like, I wish I could add one more thing, or there needs to be a few more fruit or a little bit more vegetable or something. And maybe that's like, I keep thinking that that's probably my weak spot as an artist, is like I always want to change things after I see it up. So I feel like with these installations, I sort of like secure myself this possibility of like, yeah, I can like get that satisfaction of changing it later on. And then these are some more functional pieces that branched off from the tiles. And it's sort of a new adventure for me too, because I don't often make functional work. But now that I've like drawn out this whole catalog of imagery, I've been playing with my templates to create more functional objects. So this is a vase. The last one was a birthday candle holder, some more vases, a face vase. And I think I'm going to be making more of these in the next year. More things like this, a tiger tray. And then this is a tostada on one of my tostada plates. And here's some more tostada plates. So this has been sort of another ongoing project for me on the side of my installations. And I started making these pinchy little plates like 4 years ago, with the idea that they would sort of mimic the bumpiness of a fried tortilla. And I like the idea that maybe they could direct people away from using a knife and fork, because tostada is eaten out of your hand normally. And I think if you tried to use a knife and a fork on this bumpy plate, you'd feel pretty foolish. So that was like my subtle way of directing people without having to say, don't use a knife and a fork. And it's sort of a fun project for me. I'm like really loose with the brush strokes and the patterns. And to me, like the process of making them and the process of like, eating a tostada on one of these plates is all about the simple pleasure of just like enjoying oneself. And I think like the dream and goal for me with this project is to have a big tostada party. And then these are some images from a more recent show. My first solo show I had was during quarantine. And I didn't get to see it in person, unfortunately, but they did such an amazing job, like putting it online and giving it this like virtual, like you could look through the gallery virtually online. And I've never seen anything like that before. And you can still see the show and the whole catalog on lysongallery.com. I was really happy with the show. But so the idea for this show was basically about a difficult conversation between generations. The title was Cono sin cebolla, with or without onions. And it was supposed to be like a play between what someone would take on their plate in terms of food, but also symbolically in terms of things such as like tradition and gender roles. What do you want to pass on to the next person, and what should be left behind on the table? So the onion served up in the installation is supposed to represent this emotion while tears drop onto one of the plates. And then in contrast, another plate has chosen something more fruitful with cucumber and lime, while other plates may still be deciding what to choose. I'm hoping in a way that I'm able to invite my audience to place themselves at the table and maybe think about what they would like to put on a plate. And just like really consider what you're taking and passing, and then the cutting boards that kind of went along with this piece were sort of the action associated with what's being placed on the table. This was like a salsa being prepared, and then the second one had more suggestive fruit and gender parts. And the idea is about like cutting ties with binarily defined duties and moving towards a more equitable generation. And then I wanted to create sort of like a more fruitful, nourishing ending with this piece. And this is one of those pieces where I'm still wishing like, oh, there needs to be more fruit on that board. I think that might be the last image. I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to follow for more, I'm on Instagram. All my links are on my profile page to websites and shows I'm in, and whatever I'm involved in is on that page. Thank you so much.
Can you also repeat the name of the gallery where you had your solo show recently?
Laisun Gallery, Laisun.
Got it. I'm sure your website will also link us there, yes?
Yes, yes.
Good. And you do have an Etsy site, correct?
Yes, I do have Etsy.
Well, thank you. That was really wonderful. So I know you talked about this a little bit, you talked about a lot of these ideas, but I think it's really interesting how over time, you've changed your installations so that the narratives that you're creating, right, are more flexible. And so it sounds like, with more current work, you're actually sort of curating the narrative as you go, or curating the symbols. Do you expect to continue to work in that manner? So like, could you use some of the same work, but actually show it in a different way? So you're telling a different story, but using the same pieces, or repeating the same sort of imagery or symbolism?
In the beginning, I kind of would like swap some pieces because I sort of felt like they were just my props to kind of play with in different shows. But now I feel like that my style is like changing a little bit, and I'm sort of like feeling like some of these pieces I need to retire or I need to keep them as one thing, and like, have that be that, and like, either send it somewhere or sell it to someone, and like I need to start fresh. I feel like some of the pieces, and so I think I'm starting to want to move away from that. I still like want to edit the table piece once more before like saying it's set. But I haven't really touched it in like over a year now. But I keep thinking about like, I want to change the surfaces a little bit, and there's a lot more food that I'm missing on that table. Like, there's so much more I want to eat off that table. So so I want to do both in a way, I guess.
It's your practice. You can do whatever you want. Right?
Something that I kind of like to ask a lot of our visiting artists is if you would have any sort of, I don't know, recommendations or I don't know, actually, how should I say this? Do you have any advice for students who are just getting started in their art careers? Because you have kind of a pretty full, prolific career. I thought maybe you could share some of your insights.
The advice that was given to me that I really took to heart was just always be making. And so I'm just always make, even when you don't like really know what you're doing. A lot of the times it makes sense later. It all like comes together and means something, because everything like that comes out of your hands, like even if you don't really understand it right away, it came from you and it holds an piece of information about you. And even when you're in a rut, if you just like get a little thing out of the way, like it gets you closer to the better thing. And so like just always be making, it was the number one advice that I took to heart.
Have you ever had a moment in time in your career where you just doubted yourself and felt like there wasn't any inspiration, or sort of say like a writer's block or a creative block?
I think everybody gets that a lot. um, and I mean, when I have those, sometimes like even if I feel like so paralyzed that I can't like do anything in the studio,
Yeah,
I still go to the studio and I just like sit there and like somehow I feel like eventually I'm gonna like get back in it. Um, just making the effort to get into the studio.
yeah,
Like someone once told me like and this might sound kind of cheesy, but they said like there's a flame inside of you that is like your desire to make, and even if it like is like dying down to like this tiny little flicker, just don't let it blow out. Just keep it like just going just a little. And so
nice.
for me, that message was like even just like go to the studio, even if you don't have the motivation. I try to get in there, and even if it's just to like put one thing away, just to keep me going. And then eventually you get through those little ruts, and something strikes you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Uh-huh.
It also makes me think of the previous question in your answer, is always be making, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like
Exactly.
sort of make your way through it almost.
Mhm.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like when I take like actual time away from the studio, like if I take a little vacation or I take a trip, like if I take 2 days off, it takes me like 4 days back in the studio to get my hands back into that correct rhythm. Like,
Yeah.
you always feel awkward after a break, so um, it's important to always like keep your hands in that rhythm.
Can I ask a question about, early on you mentioned that a lot of the images we were looking at came from both artist and teaching residencies. Can you talk about your experiences with both kinds of residencies, sort of what the difference is? I'll just speak to those a bit.
Most of the residencies that I've done have been like free or paid residencies. I never do anything that I have to pay for because it's already so hard as an artist. And I think like the first reason that I went out and looked for a residency right away after school was just partly because I'm a ceramic artist and I need facilities. Um, but now that I look back, like I think like the most important thing to me while doing these residencies was getting to meet all these different people. Like that's like the most valuable thing in doing these things is just this network of friends, and we continue to help each other and support each other even after the fact of being in these places. And so I've done residencies where they were just we were just full-time working in the studio. I've done like short-term and long-term, and I think they all have their great benefits. And then even while like teaching residencies are a little bit harder to like get other work done. I mean, as much work done because you're also teaching. I also feel like while teaching, I'm learning so much, like even just like me, like remembering to like how to explain things out loud kind of reminds me certain things. And I learned from students as well. It's goes both ways. So I think they're all so valuable and worth the time and the effort. And people always ask me like, isn't it so hard just to like keep moving all over the place? And it's hard. Like every time I have to move, I'm like, oh my god, this is so much. Like, but I never regret it once I get there. And after I do these residencies, I've never regretted like any of the things that I've done. Like they've all been so helpful to me.
We have a question in the chat from Evelyn. How did you get started with your career and what drew you to ceramics?
So when I was younger, I actually when I was in high school, I took like some cake decorating classes, and at the time I thought like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to decorate cakes. and I have a big family, so every birthday I was like designing this like whimsical cake, like a cake that looked like a cactus or a chessboard or a football. Like I would do those kind of cakes. Um, but my parents wanted me to go to college, and I mean they didn't go to college, so they wanted that for me. So I went to college, and I thought like, oh, I'll take some art classes that might like help like support my career that I wanted as a cake decorator. And right away I took a ceramics class, and I was like, this is way better. Like my pieces, like they're set in stone. They don't get eaten up. Like all that work doesn't get eaten up in an hour, you know? And I really liked that. And I just was really drawn to clay. And I had a wonderful teacher, and she was so supportive and encouraging that I just like, this is it. This is it for me. Like as soon as I got into it, I just never looked back.
So since you shared your past as a baker and cake decorator, I'm curious to know, because of so much of your work does center around food, around the traditions of food, around family, and around the kitchen table. Do you also enjoy cooking? Like, does it come from the kitchen as well?
Yeah, I mean, I love cooking, but like right now, I kind of cook in phases. Like if I'm working on a big show, like I'm just in the studio 24/7. But then like after the show is like put up, then I'm like cooking for a couple of weeks straight. Like I like have my phases of like either I'm cooking in the studio or I'm cooking in the kitchen. But it's not like every day I'm doing both. I feel like I fluctuate because I guess my personality is just like I need all of one thing and then I move to the next thing. Kind of like a song that you get stuck in your head and you have to hear it over and over and over. Like, that's how I am. I'm like, I need to be in the studio all these next 2 weeks, or I need to be in the kitchen like all week or something.
Do you have any artists that you're looking at right now or have always been looking at maybe that you'd like to amplify or give a shout out to for the rest of us so we can look them up?
I mean, some of my favorite artists are like some of my best friends. um, Ling Chun, she also talks a lot about identity, and her like culture in a very abstract way. And she's a really fun person, and her work is just so like fun to like bright and just like splashes of color. And she also uses like mixed media and hair, and she like refers to herself as like this beauty school dropout. And it's so entertaining to hear her talk about her work and just to like look at these pieces. And you're always like discovering something new as you're like investigating her works, because there's just so much to look at and enjoy. um, Another one of my favorites, Yunji Kwak. She makes these like coil pinchy uh, vessels, that are just like so delicate and intricate, and just like really breathtaking pots. I don't think I've ever seen anything like her work. And she talks about them like they're people, these vessels, like they have like warmth and soul. And she talks about like if you're a person who's generous and like has something to offer, then you have a really big vessel inside of you. And so that's how she refers to her pieces. It's like these are like generous pieces that have something to give. And if you meet her, she's the most generous person, like always offering Korean food to people. And she's so sweet. And it just makes so much sense that her work is about like offering. Um, Another one of my favorites is Margaret Kincaid. Um, and she does a lot of work about like domestic objects as well. And she's really interested in like quilting bees, and her family has a history of like making quilts. And so she makes a lot of pieces that um, where the surface looks like a quilted square, but she also does like these installations where she makes a bunch of plates that look like quilt fabric squares. And if you go to like an opening, everyone gets to eat off of a plate, and after they eat off of a plate, they get to place the plate on the wall and kind of create the quilt together, as a community. And I think that's really beautiful too. So I think those are some of my favorites.
So Christina, you did talk about how you're sort of the trajectory of your work and, how you're sort of moving into more uh, flat work, tile work, functional work, right? So you're sort of, you've seen this shift over time. Are any of those shifts due to COVID per se, or due to the pandemic? Like, has the pandemic affected your practice in other ways that you can speak about?
Yeah, I mean it's I feel like the pandemic has been a little bit of like a struggle to work at home. Partly because I work in ceramics and I used to relying on like a communal facility. So it kind of slowed me down a little bit. Um, and I feel like ceramic artists are so community based, and especially when we're talking about pottery and like a lot of themes around the table. And so that like lack of in-person contact has been like I think a little lonely. But I feel like it hasn't stopped like conversations from continuing like through Zoom and social media and emails. I feel like a lot of people are still addressing certain issues in our field um, while at home, and still supporting each other in a lot of great ways, which is wonderful. So the perspective I feel like has been different, but still a little bit the same. And I'm still trying to grasp like long term what might be different because of this in my work. Um, but I feel like it's definitely created a space where I'm more inclined to reflect on what I've worked on in the past and where I want to be in the future. Because I've definitely slowed down my production a little bit. I'm not, I mean, I'm still in the studio every day, but I'm not like going through 100 pounds a day of clay. I go through just a little bit each day. Um, but I'm not stressed about that. I feel like I'm satisfied with what I have on my plate right now. And I'm enjoying the time to like take more time to think about it and be a little bit more thoughtful in what I make. And because I don't have a large kiln here, I just have a little small test kiln. I'm more conscientious about like what I'm making and making sure it counts. Like it's just like something really important to me. So I've been more thoughtful about it in that way.
Are you preparing for any oncoming shows? Do you have anything coming up in the near future that we can look forward to?
Yeah. I'm next month is like a fruit and vegetable themed show, of course, that I got invited to. And so I'm just making 2 pieces, and so I'm working on that right now, which will be fun. It's nice to be able to do like one small little thing once in a while. And then I'm also working on another tile composition for Lysong Gallery that I had the solo show at, which will be probably in July. And I'm kind of imagining maybe picking a different theme because I know it's always food and table. And being at home right now, I'm spending more time with my animals. Like I have 2 cats, and since quarantine, I got a puppy and I got a dozen chickens. And so I'm just like always hanging out with my animals and bonding with them. So I've been wondering about maybe doing like an animal theme tile composition, and that'll be totally new for me. So you can look out for that.
And Christina, where is the show that you have a couple pieces in next month? Can you tell us?
Giant robot.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Awesome.
Yeah, it's sort of like an eclectic gallery. They do like themed shows and like invite a lot of artists. I'm excited about it.
I think, don't they do a big post-it show that's really
Yeah.
popular? Yeah, cool.
Great.
I wanted to ask about, I love the jugs and some of the other work that speaks to, gender and bodies and, binaries. I'm curious if those are themes that you'll continue to explore in your work.
I think so, because and when I did that show, I was really excited about it and I was very pleased with it, but I also at the same time wanted to spend more time on it. And it just happened. I immediately made that work right after I moved back here. So it was kind of a struggle to like get it out, but I still want to come back to those ideas, and I was writing a lot about it So I do want to like dive deeper back into that topic.
I really love those works because they're, I mean, of course, they have your sort of whimsy and humor like on the surface, right? But then if you dig a little deeper, there's like, it's pretty heavy and interesting. I like that.
Thank you.
So I always love to know what people are reading, watching, listening to, like what's your guilty pleasure? What is, you know, sustaining you during this like really difficult year plus you've been living through, we've all been living through, reading, watching.
I feel like I have sort of eclectic taste, so I'm like all over the place. But I did just finish this little poetry book called Vestiaro. Like it's about animals by Pablo Neruda, and I think it's kind of funny and like it kind of matches my humor, I think. Um, and it just oh, I think my brother's outside. Sorry. Um, so I really enjoy that, and it has like really great illustrations in it, a lot of great prints, and a lot of times I like to pick out books that like have a lot of great illustrations too. And even like children's books, I still buy used children's books to look at the illustrations, and I just like the short little sweet little storylines. There was a book I just bought. What is it called? If You're Afraid of the Dark, Remember the Night Rainbow. And it had like this. The reason I like looked for it is because I saw an image from the book online, and it reminded me just of it reminded me of one of my place settings that had like clouds around it, and there was an illustration just like that, and I just thought it was so beautiful, and it just felt like so me. So I went and looked for it. And also like graphic novels a lot. I just finished the Paper Girl series. I really enjoyed those. And then I'm currently like reading, my friend recommended Fewer Better Things. It's about like material intelligence, and On Beauty and Being Just is another book I'm reading right now. Reading those a little bit more slowly. I read in like short increments, so I'm like taking my time with those. Let's see and I'm listening to right now is a lot of Spanish oldies. I think just because being home, I'm feeling nostalgic, so I'm listening to a lot of Spanish oldies on my phone. And I started this series called This Is Us. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I'm really enjoying that sweet storyline about the family and the triplets, and they just have a lot of nice perspectives in that TV show, and I think it's really sweet.
We have a question in the chat from Lucy. Lucy asks, did you ever have any pushback or doubts with family in pursuing a career in ceramics? If so, what helped you overcome that?
There's been a few times when there maybe someone questioned what I was doing early on, because early on it's difficult, and you're not seeing like the reward of your hard work quite yet. And so I remember a couple of times maybe some of my brothers questioned, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you going to do with this career? Like, what are you going to do after you get out of school? And why don't you, and maybe some more subtle hints of my sisters forwarding me like job listings that weren't related to what I was doing. And so that got me down a little bit, but I also had to be like, I have to like just let it fall off of me, like just fall down. Like I try not to think about it too hard, because I they don't know that like what I feel like I know. Like I know I have this in me, and I know I'm gonna work at it. And I don't know. I believe in myself was the thing. And that's what kept me going, is having belief in myself, and, not trying to worry too much about what others thought. And I knew like eventually things are gonna like pick up. That's just how it is in art. It's hard in the beginning.
Thanks so much for your time and energy today. What a pleasure to spend the afternoon with you. And thanks to those of you who attended live. We appreciate you spending a little bit of your afternoon with us as well. So Roman's putting a few links in the chat. Definitely take a look at those, including the survey chat. And we also want to remind you to visit our website to sign up for future episodes of Home Edition. We appreciate y'all. Thanks so much, Christina, and please take care, everybody.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.